Let's face it, being an adult is hard. You got all these responsibilities, you got bills, you gotta pay rent. Honestly though, I like being an adult, which is more than I can say for all the adults on this list. I'm about to count down the top 10 adults caught posing as children. Get ready. What's gravy? You're watching IO. I'm Charlotte Delray. I'm back at it again with another spicy top 10 list. If you're new here, hi. Nice to meet you. How about we take our relationship to the next level and you subscribe? And if you've already subscribed, turn on the bell. And if you've already done both of those things, then follow me on Instagram. And if you've already done all three of those things, good job. Here's an invisible potato. Alright, I'm counting down the top 10 adults caught posing as children. Let's go. Starting things off at number 10, we got Michelle Ann Goodrich. Back in 2018, 32-year-old Michelle Ann pretended to be a homeless 15-year-old girl named Rowley Madison in order to enroll in classes at an upstate New York high school. Under a 1987 law, the school district had to enroll her as a student because she claimed to be homeless, even if she didn't have the proper documents to support her age. An investigation revealed that she already had a high school diploma, so no one really knows why she enrolled in high school a second time. She rode the bus every day to Cairo-Durham High School until one day when she didn't show up for school and teachers became suspicious. She was eventually arrested in December of 2018 in Cairo, New York, and faced charges of offering a false instrument for filing, falsifying business records, and criminal trespassing. Yes, in case you wanted to know, it is illegal to pretend to be a child. At number 9 on our list, Sidney Bouvier Gilstrap Portley. Sidney was a 25-year-old man and Hurricane Harvey refugee who was caught posing as a 17-year-old playing basketball at Hillcrest High School in Dallas, Texas in 2017 and 18. The reason? He wanted to relive his glory days as a high school basketball all-star. Sidney played basketball for North Mesquite High School before graduating in 2011. He was caught posing as a 17-year-old after a North Mesquite coach recognized him at a tournament. That's awkward. How did he not think that would happen? Apparently while he was posing as a 17-year-old, he also dated a 14-year-old. That's illegal. And it's also illegal to pose as a student. He pleaded guilty and received 6 years probation for indecency with a child and record tampering. It turns out that Sidney also had a young child and a fiance while he was doing this. His father at the time said, I quote, "He made errors. There was no ill intent. We apologize for that happening. It was mischanneled determination. His passion is basketball. He tried to push rewind in his life." Side note, parents always see the best in you, don't they? At 8 on our list, Charity Johnson. Back in 2013, 34-year-old Charity Johnson pretended to be a high school sophomore for almost an entire school year before she was found out. She attended New Life Christian School in Longview, Texas, and lied about being 15 years old for 7 whole months. She was arrested in June 2014 when she flashed a fake ID to police under the fake name Sharit Stevens after they were called to an apartment she was staying in. Her excuse was that she was abandoned by her family and only looking for love. She said, I quote, "I'm just a normal person like any other normal person, trying to pursue her education, get her education, and make it through life and be a better person." The principal at New Life Christian School told the press she acted like a 15 or 16-year-old girl. She was an attentive student, did her homework, but still, Charity Johnson was given an 85-day prison sentence. At lucky number 7 on our list, Artur Smarin. Artur Smarin was a 23-year-old Ukrainian man who went by the name Asher Potts so he could enroll in high school in America. The reason? His visa ran out. Artur came to the United States when he was 18 back in 2012 under a short work visa through a Ukrainian university. He flipped burgers at Red Robin in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and he also befriended a couple, Stephanie and Michael Potts, who agreed to adopt him so he didn't have to go back to the Ukraine. This sounds familiar. The Potts asked Smarin to shave 5 years off his age so he could be adopted by them, and also get benefits from the government. Police said that he stayed in the US after his visa expired and even managed to get a hold of a social security number and a passport under his fake name. He was also an exceptional student and had a 4.16 grade point average. I feel like most of us would do better in high school the second time around though, don't you think? Anyways, Smarin's relationship with his adoptive parents took a bad turn. They physically abused him if he didn't do their household chores, and they threatened him with deportation. Eventually they went to the police in his last year of high school, calling him a foreign terrorist that planned to shoot up his high school. They are actually making a movie out of this true story, and Ansel Elgort is gonna play him. In at 6, Gerdwich Montemir, another basketball player. Gerdwich pretended to be a 16-year-old boy when he was actually 21, all because he wanted to play basketball in Texas. He pretended to be a Haitian orphan and went by the name Jerry Joseph. He played on the Odessa Perriman High School basketball team in 2009. He actually showed a lot of promise by the year 2010 and was on track to become a college basketball star. He even convinced the school's head basketball coach Danny Wright, who liked him so much he put him up at his home. But yet again, Gerdwich was recognized at a tournament in Arkansas by his previous coaches. And then it all came out. Girdwich was charged with falsifying documents and also sleeping with a 15-year-old girl who thought he was only 16. He was eventually released from prison in 2013. Halfway there now at number 5, Brian Michael Riney. 24-year-old Brian made headlines in 2019 because he told police that he was a missing boy. Timothy Pitson, who went missing from a Chicago suburb in 2011 when he was only 6 years old. Brian told the police he was 14 years old when he was really 24, and that he was actually the missing boy. He said he escaped kidnappers in Ohio and was missing for 8 years after his mother committed suicide. His identity ended up being released after the FBI's DNA test results confirmed he wasn't Timothy Pitson. In fact, he had a criminal record dating back to 2013 and his DNA was already in the system. That's awkward. Brian was charged by the FBI for making false statements to a federal agent and could face up to 8 years in federal prison for his stunt. No one knows why he made up the story though. That's still a mystery. At number 4 on our list, Taylor Markeith Smith. Back in 2011, it was found out that 22-year-old Taylor pretended to be a teenager so he could play football at no less than 13 different schools across Texas. I will let that sink in. 13 different schools. Jim Ledford, football coach at Berkner High School in 2011, said that Taylor Smith told him he was 16 when he tried to enroll at Berkner in 2008. He also said that his parents had passed away. Police believe that Taylor tried almost everything to play high school football. Some schools let him in without question, and then in other instances, Smith brought in a fake district caseworker when he tried to enroll. That is some dedication right there. Many of his coaches said that he seemed like he would be the next star player, but he was pretty much a con artist who would disappear right before he was found out before moving to another high school and trying the scam again. In at 3, Frederic Bourdin. 23-year-old Frederic is from France, and he managed to convince an American family that he was their missing son, Nicholas Barclay, who disappeared from his home in San Antonio, Texas back in 1994. Nicholas was only 13 years old at the time. Frederic went to Spanish police 3.5 years after Nicholas Barclay went missing, stating that he was the missing teen. His story was that he was abducted, taken to Europe, and abused by a notorious ring before he managed to escape. The Barclays bought the story, they flew to Spain, picked him up, and took him back to the US. Frederic Bourdin managed to fool a heck of a lot of people. The Barclays, the Spanish police, and the US consulate, even though he didn't look anything like the missing boy. So why did the Barclays agree to take him to the US? Well, there was actually a documentary made on Frederic Bourdin, and it makes the claim that the family had ulterior motives. Bourdin was exposed as a notorious con artist and is now known in France as the Chameleon. He spent 6 years in prison for pretending to be Nicholas Barclay. In at 2, a man who is only known as Sea of Ash. Pretty much as soon as he started the school year at Stokes High School in Suffolk, England, students and parents began to complain about a 6'1" man with stubble and an Adam's apple that was attending classes. He wore glasses, but they weren't prescription. It turns out that Sea of Ash was born in Iran, and he was forced to flee the Middle East before arriving in the UK. He claimed asylum and said that he and his brother were 15 and 12 years old. The school didn't look into the accusations made by students and parents because they believed that they were racially motivated. Now, Sea of Ash didn't really do anything inappropriate, but ultimately he was exposed after authorities found out he was posing as a child in order to take advantage of the British free education system. This case actually forced Britain to make it a lot harder for asylum seekers to fake their age. And at number 1, Natalia Barnett. You knew this was coming. The person who inspired this top 10 list. Natalia Barnett is from the Ukraine and she has a rare form of dwarfism, so no one really knows how old she is. She's at the center of an adoption scandal right now. She was adopted by an American family, the Barnetts, who believed she was between 6 and 8 years old in 2010. But the Barnetts slowly started to see clues that she was a lot older than she said she was. She had periods, full pubic hair, and medical conditions only adults can be diagnosed with. Natalia also started being violent toward the Barnetts, who legally changed her birth year to 1989, making her 30 years old today. Natalia now lives with another family, the Manns, who believe that she's a teenager. But the Barnetts are facing trial on charges of neglect and are set to face trial in January 2020. If you guys want more info on Natalia Barnett, I highly recommend you check out our previous coverage. There's a lot of info there, way too much for me to cover in a top 10 list. Whew, that's it. I'm sweating, it's too hot for a turtleneck.
At number 10, we got Neil H. Roderick II. This man was arrested in 2007 for pretending to be Casey, a 12-year-old boy who is described as shy and an average student with chronic attendance problems. The reason for his arrest? He was under investigation in 3 different states before he was apprehended in Arizona and charged with failing to register as a sex offender on more than one occasion. He also had a large database of inappropriate pictures and videos of minors, among other disturbing footage of him and a minor. If that's not enough to make your stomach turn, this scumbag was living in a home with 3 other men who pretended to be Roderick's grandfather, uncle, and cousin, and were all convicted sex offenders and predators. At number 9, we got Ana Arreola Hernandez. 24-year-old Hernandez was arrested in 2014 and sentenced to 10 years in prison and a lifetime probation after she pretended to be a teenager to try to engage in sexual acts with underage boys. She would pose as a 15-year-old girl and use apps such as Facebook, Keek, Snapchat, and Tango to get in touch with the underage boys, with some being younger than 15. When asked, she admitted to preferring younger boys rather than men, but didn't explain why. I hate people so much, guys. And at number 8, the father of a 13-year-old pretending to be his child, but he had good reason to do so. And I'm actually extremely happy he did. After the father of this 13-year-old saw the messages 29-year-old Brandon Ruff was sending his child, the father decided to take matters into his own hands. The minor's father went as far as inviting Ruff over to their home. Ruff was under the impression he'd be meeting the 13-year-old he was initially speaking to, but was surprised when the minor's father answered the door. At that point, Ruff was held by the child's father until police arrived to apprehend him. Ruff was later charged with false informing, child solicitation, among a couple other charges. At number 7, Jonathan Elia Nicola. The 29-year-old South Sudanese man enrolled and played for a Windsor, Ontario high school basketball team, and when he was caught, he admitted even he didn't know his age. According to Nicola, whenever he would ask his mother how old he was, she would say she doesn't know. What's even crazier is how it all happened. Nicola arrived at Pearson International Airport in Toronto on a student visa to attend Catholic Central Secondary School in Windsor on a full scholarship. According to a spokesperson for the school, they don't offer athletic scholarships, so no one really knows who paid for it in the first place. On top of this, Nicola was only caught because when he applied for a US visitor's visa to play basketball with the school, presumably against American teams, the US Border Services Agency alerted the Canadian border that this man's fingerprints matched that of a former failed refugee claimant with the same name but a different age. So good job, Canada. At number 6, we got Patricia Dye, a 31-year-old woman who pretended to be a 14-year-old boy named Matthew Abrams so she could have a relationship with a 16-year-old girl. If this isn't already bad enough, Patricia's parents actually defended the 31-year-old daughter. Ralph Dye, Patricia's father, claims the victim knew she was a girl. The family lives together in a motel, and Dorothy Dye, Patricia's mother, denied the claim that Patricia and the victim slept in a van together. She argued nothing ever happened and that Patricia slept in the same bed with her, not the victim. I think they're missing the bigger picture here that a 31-year-old pretending to be 14 is still extremely illegal. Coming in at number 5, we got Robert Hunter. Now this guy takes sick to another level. Hunter pretended to be Justin Bieber back in 2013 while on Facebook, Skype, and MSN, and typed to speak with his victims, claiming his microphone on his webcam wasn't working properly. He most likely used some fake videos of Bieber to lure them at first, and when the victims became suspicious, he allegedly threatened to tell their parents after he filmed them doing what he asked them to do. Sure, you can figure it out for yourselves, but if you guys need any help, this guy is a disgrace to the human race and should be locked up forever, if you get what I'm saying. He was sentenced to 14 years after admitting to the charges laid against him, and hopefully word gets out of what he did while he serves time. These types of guys never do well in prison, if you get what I mean. And at number 4, we got the Riverside Cops. I know, cops pretending to be kids seems kinda weird, right? Well, think of it like a real life 21 Jump Street, because that's exactly what happened. A total of 25 students were arrested from 2 separate high schools for selling a range of drugs from marijuana to cocaine and even some prescription pills. Of those arrested, only 2 of them were adults, 18-year-old Serena Ramirez and 19-year-old Eric De La Cruz. All the others were taken to juvenile detention halls, and what's even more interesting is that no one on campus knew about the operation until the day before the arrests. According to Jonathan Greenberg, who is the superintendent of the high school district, only 3 district officials knew about the investigation, so I'm sure the teachers were just as surprised as the students when they saw a handful of their classmates get taken away in cuffs. Coming in at number 3, Justin from Mississauga. This one hits close to home because I live 20 minutes from Sauga. That's what Toronto mans call it. Sauga. Anyway, this guy has been considered a vigilante of sorts. Going only by Justin, the 28-year-old construction worker by day pretends to be a minor on dating websites at night, where he lures men trying to meet up with him, assuming he is indeed a minor. He poses as both a boy and a girl, and sets days and times to meet up with these suspected offenders across the greater Toronto area. It started when he posed as a 13-year-old girl named Jennifer just to see what would happen. One man drove nearly 2 hours to meet with him, assuming he'd be meeting 13-year-old Jennifer. After that instance, he felt sick and heartbroken someone would actually do that, which inspired him to continue luring these guys so he can expose them. When they show up to meet the minors they think they're meeting, Justin films them and posts the footage on social media to expose them. Some of his confrontations have even led to arrest. So keep up the good work, Justin. At number 2, 20-year-old Ethan. That's what he goes by, and for good reason. He tricked a cop into believing he was a 16-year-old girl, and the cop still wanted to hook up with him, or I guess her as far as the cop was concerned. Using the gender swap filter on Snapchat, Ethan set up a profile on Tinder, pretending to be Esther. When Esther got a message from Robert Davies, a 40-year-old San Mateo police officer saying, "Are you down to have some fun tonight?" he decided to roll with it. They started talking on Keek, which is when Esther said she was 16, knowing that Tinder requires you to be 18. When asked if Davies was okay with that, the the cop responded yes, even though the age of consent in California is 18. After 12 hours of messaging back and forth, Ethan had enough evidence to submit to Crime Stoppers, which led to the arrest of the now former officer. And in at number 1, Gemma Barker. This 19-year-old woman disguised herself as 3 different boys and was dating 2 girls while pretending to be a boy. Online, she created the identities of Aaron Lampard, Connor McCormick, and Luke Jones, who all had their own Facebook accounts, emails, and phone numbers. Barker had real-life relationships with 2 16-year-old girls and duped them by wearing beanies and baggy clothing to hide her gender. She even went as far as meeting one of the victim's parents, who also fell for the disguise. Barker was eventually caught when one of the suspects thought the boy she was dating looked a lot like the boy the other victim was in a relationship with. The craziest part of the story is Barker actually knew the 2 16-year-olds before she disguised herself as a boy and started taking them out. Barker was sentenced to register as a sex offender, released on bail, and is being treated for her psychological disorder.
Recently, a 28-year-old woman was arrested after police said that she posed as a high school student to promote her Instagram page. This woman even handed out flyers with her Instagram page on them, asking people to follow her as she wore a backpack and carried a skateboard under her arm. I mean, this is quite literally the "how do you do, fellow kids" meme, but in real life. I'm gonna get into all the details of this bizarre story in just a moment, but first, if you could do us a big favor and please tap that like button, we'd really appreciate it. And with that out of the way, let's begin. The woman has been identified as 28-year-old Audrey Frances Sweeney, who, as I mentioned, was allegedly caught handing out flyers with her Instagram handle on them while in a Miami-Dade high school. According to reports, she had approached multiple students in the hallways of American Senior High School, telling students about her social media page. Strangely enough, she has also been identified as a Carnival Cruise Line employee, and after being confronted by security, she quickly fled the scene. Authorities say that security became suspicious when she claimed to be a student who was just looking for the school's administration office. Police then located Audrey at her Miami Beach home later that evening, which is when she was actually arrested and taken into custody. When police arrived, the woman apparently took to her Instagram stories and said, I don't know how many cops outside right now of my house. I'm not going outside at all." And it wasn't even that difficult for the police to actually find her either, because she had left these flyers behind with her Instagram handle on them, so chasing clout led to a very quick chase for the police. The Miami-Dade Circuit Judge Mindy S. Glazer said in court regarding the situation, "It says here she's trying to get people to follow her on Instagram," adding, "First of all, I don't know how you get into the school. They have a guard at the front. You have to show your ID." The prosecutors explained the way that she got into the school by saying that she was able to blend in with these students to pass through security. A prosecutor said during the trial, "She was carrying a skateboard, a painting, dressed similar to students to try and blend in." And the arrest report said that when she was confronted by security, the woman was handing out the flyers while filming on her phone. A student who gave a key witness account said she was I think recording some stuff in there, like some crazy stuff, and she had the devil's mask and everything. It's crazy, it's very creepy. This mask that was referred to in the witness testimony actually appeared frequently on the woman's page. Currently, she faces charges of trespassing and interfering with a school. She was also granted a $2,000 bond with orders to stay away from the school. Her public defender could also be heard saying, "If someone shoves a camera in your face, just don't talk about this," as she was leaving the court. This is really one of those situations that must be very tough for a public defender. I mean, their client quite literally couldn't resist exposing themselves and providing evidence to the prosecutor assigned to this case. All of the witness reports were immediately backed up because Audrey could not resist the urge to share the video that she took inside of the school. Now the only follower that she's gonna have is a parole officer. Also, it was reported that she worked as a salesperson for Carnival Cruise Lines, and a spokesperson for the company has said that they are going to be investigating the matter internally and will take further action if needed. However, those are all of the updates that we have for you right now on this story, but definitely leave us a comment down below with your thoughts.
But a 30-year-old disguising as a 13-year-old and made it through lunch?
Do you remember the movie 13 Going on 30? Well, this is the opposite of that. A 30-year-old mother actually posed as her own daughter and almost went through an entire day of school before anyone even noticed. She called it a social experiment, but the police begged to differ. I'm gonna get into all those details in just a moment, but first, if you could do us a big favor and tap that like button, we'd really appreciate it. And with that out of the way, let's begin. A mother who has been identified as Casey Garcia was recently arrested in El Paso, Texas after she was caught posing as her 13-year-old daughter for what was almost a full day of school. Garcia documented her experience from getting dressed like her daughter to interacting with staff and students at the school. She wore a yellow Marvel hoodie, a black disposable mask, jeans, a backpack, and some high-top sneakers. What's mind-blowing was that that's all it took for her to go completely unnoticed throughout the entire day that she was in this school. Baffled when she doesn't get caught, Casey says to the camera, "Do I look like a 7th grader? No? Cool. Awesome. further driving home the fact that no one is paying attention to her. As she ate her lunch, she reported that she had even been face to face with teachers and said that she was her daughter only for them to welcome her back. No one actually noticed that it wasn't her daughter until 7th class period, which is basically at the end of the school day. Not only did she come into contact with teachers, but apparently she had also spoken with the principal and the security guards at the front door. Before being caught at the end of the day, the only trouble that she had found herself in was when she had her phone out, adding, "The school was so concerned that my phone was out that they weren't even paying attention to who I was." Now, as I mentioned earlier, the mother's whole reason for doing this was a social experiment. She said that it was only about the safety of our children and prevention of another mass shooting. As of the end of May, there have been at least 225 mass shootings in the US in 2021 alone. In March, experts said that there would likely be an increase when students return to the classroom after that long period of remote learning. Although they promised that threat assessment training and stricter gun laws would prevent further tragedies. However, even if her intentions were good, Casey Garcia shouldn't have never done this. Now she faces charges of criminal trespassing and tampering with government records in connection with the incident, according to the El Paso County Sheriff's Office. The video itself actually ends up with her being sent to the principal's office after a school official alerted authorities that an adult intruder had made their way into the school. Casey made it very easy for detectives as well, because all they had to do was review her social media posts, including the video that she posted to YouTube, and that was all the grounds that they required to show up at her home and arrest her. What's bizarre is what happened when she filmed the interaction that she had with the police.
Go ahead.
We're here because we're going to place you under arrest, ma'am.
Okay.
You do have a traffic warrant with us, ma'am?
A traffic warrant?
Yes, ma'am. You're going to be placed under arrest for traffic warrant, okay, ma'am?
Okay.
The police said that they had been sent to her home to arrest her because she had an outstanding traffic warrant. When she pressed them as to whether or not there was any other reason, i.e. the school video, both officers said that they had no knowledge of the video and that it was simply for the traffic warrant. This is actually the second time though that an adult has been accused of infiltrating a school. If you recall, we did a story not that long ago about a 28-year-old woman sneaking into a school as a student. Once inside, she began pressuring high schoolers into following her on Instagram. But in comparison, the first story is nothing compared to that weirdo who did it for more followers. That being said, both were absolutely inappropriate, and even though Casey was trying to make a good point, I guess, it could have been done in a better way. But we'd love to hear what you all think about this, so make sure to drop us a comment down below with your thoughts. And while you do that, I'm going to check out some of your comments from the video titled "The Truth About Logan Paul." Sam J says, "People shouldn't be allowed to do stuff like this and be famous, makes no sense." Trust me, Sam, it doesn't make any sense to me either. Amanda Eimer says, "Really shows how our standards have readjusted over the years and people have the nerve to call us sensitive." Yeah, people just really don't even understand what YouTube was like at that time and how we're trying to grow from that time. It was all just a learning experience. Michelle Horton says, "Essay is essay and no excuse no matter what or who." Couldn't agree more, Michelle. Cool Kid says, "Honestly, I don't even know how I should feel about Logan anymore. One second he isn't problematic, the next second he gets exposed or called out. I'm just saying, don't have false prophets, okay? Don't idolize these YouTubers for the words that they say or the content they put out, because you truly never know who they really are." Kids Crunches and Cooking says, "Those defending Essay here because it was a different time is mind-blowing." It certainly is mind-blowing. Nobody ever should be defending Essay in our comment sections. Please and thank you. Either way guys, that has been today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I've been your host Johnny Rogers, and until next time, stay classy YouTube.